That's it.
Thank you, Christina. Margaret Davis.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, good evening, Margaret.
I want to reiterate the complaint I made recently as to the outrageous length of city council meetings and your frequent failure to get business done. The council would do us all a favor by providing direction to the public about A, what kinds of issues are appropriate to bring up in a public forum, and B, other ways to communicate with staff and elected short of going on camera in a city council meeting. Adding to the problem, allowing 4 minutes for public comments not on the agenda is excessive and pushes the meetings into overtime or continuation. I disagree that politics is an illegitimate topic, especially in COVID, when there are few ways to get information across. But consider limiting all items on the agenda, including political endorsements, to 2 minutes. The perfect example is the Marina Equestrian Center park item recently. We had scores of well-meaning people who were misinformed and thought the city was trying to get rid of horse recreation at the Marina Equestrian Center. Knowing how confused the public was, the council could have scheduled a couple of minutes for Council Member Morton to provide a short background of the park before comments. Gail knows more about the legal status, legislative history, city vision, trail network, and National Park Service requirements than anyone, including me, because my specialty is the history. If Councilmember Morton had been on the agenda to explain that Marina is committed to horses on site, much panic could have been averted, a lot of time saved. Instead, members of the public were in the absurd position of arguing contrary to their own interests and the interests of every family in Marina by demanding that the city ignore the National Park Service requirements for the site and continue delaying the implementation of its fantastic program of utilization adopted in 2013, which includes horse recreation for all. My second item is, City, please put the link to the Coastal Commission meeting on the Marina homepage. And finally, I want to make a pitch for Measure Q, renewing the urban growth boundary. Voters, please continue to require developers to build on the Fort Ord blight and vacant lots in Central Marina and not leapfrog into new undeveloped land. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Is there anyone else that's wishing to speak? Let's go to Brian McCarthy. Good evening, Brian.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. First, just in regards to the previous comments, I deeply respect the First Amendment of the United States Constitution and the right of the public to speak on literally almost anything that they wish. But my plan is to speak to you about both Thursday's California Coastal Commission meeting and our vernal ponds. As you know, the California Coastal Commission is scheduled to decide on the Cal-Am decel CDP on Thursday, writing a huge piece of our future. For the past several years, I've advocated to protect Marina's interest on this issue, traveling to San Francisco, San Luis Obispo, Half Moon Bay, Sacramento, and other locations. I've learned a lot, but even I was surprised when the revised Coastal Commission staff report emphasized the importance of Marina's vernal ponds. In total, there are over 7 ponds identified in various reports within the city's sphere of influence. Report after report illustrates the special habitats these ponds provide, the importance these ponds play in our city, and the importance of protecting them. I am joining many of my fellow residents in telling the Coastal Commission that we value these ponds, that they are interconnected, and that Cal-Am's proposed slant wells will threaten them. Imagine my surprise and confusion that I encountered when asking questions about what is called Pond 3, located at the site of the likely soon-to-be-built Hampton Inn Hotel across the street from Walmart. So Pond 3 is actually broken up into 2 parts, Pond 3A and 3B. 3A is a pond located with a viewing platform by Cypress Cove neighborhood on the north side of Reservation Road, and Pond 3B is located across the street on the Hampton Inn lot, the south side of Reservation Road. Although I'm still researching the issue and asking to review documents, including the conditions of approval for the Hampton Inn, I'm very concerned about how we as a city are choosing to protect all of our vernal ponds, but specifically Pond 3B. The preliminary drawings I've been able to obtain label the pond as a drainage pond and do not indicate any protections for this valuable city asset as a valued vernal pond. I've made a request to review additional documents since they are not easily found on the website, and I hope to continue to bring you updates. However, I'm asking for you to consider the future of this pond and how you would like to see it protected. I understand the Hampton Inn has already been approved, so if you find the protections provided under the previous approval are not appropriate, I'd also ask that you think about what options you as a city might have to now go back and help protect these important habitat areas for our city. I hope you will give this serious consideration. And as we know, the construction of that Hampton Inn will probably happen sooner rather than later. So now is the time to be asking those questions and ensuring that we are doing the right thing to protect our future. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Brian. And we go now to Greg.
Hello, Mayor and City Council. What I would say about the internal debate about politics and public comments is everything is political, whether you're on Facebook or whether you're choosing to walk door to door or whether you're choosing to make comments in public comments section. It's that season. And there's not a heck of a lot you can do about it. As Brian pointed out, it's constitutional right. I am here speaking on behalf of Gail Morton because I admire her so much. I worked for CAL FIRE for 32 years. And the last 5 years before I moved up to this wonderful area, I grew up in the Bay Area, I worked in Riverside County, which there's about 100 stations there, and they're contracted to about 25 different cities and districts. In the last 5 years, I worked in fire protection planning, where I had the ability to interact with maybe 13 different cities and districts. City managers, building officials, planning officials, and a whole heck of a lot of elected officials, both at the county and the local district and city levels. I was able to see how local government worked effectively and identify leaders who were both effective and collaborative. I can honestly say, after maybe working with 100 people in that phase of my career, after I met Gail Morton, and it was at the local Grange with Bruce Delgado and Frank O'Connell and Gail, who was a brand new prospective candidate, and within 5 minutes, I identified what a special person she was. Gail has a remarkable ability. She's highly intelligent, maybe one of the smartest people I know, to look at a complex bit of information, body of information, analyze it, distill it down, and explain it to people in plain language. Not only that, but she has the ability, I kind of analogize it to friends that I play on a single level chessboard, Gail plays on a 3-level chessboard. She has a remarkably unique ability to look at complex problems and evaluate what the effects of decisions that can be made. She's been an invaluable resource, not only through the active work she's done, but to the city, both to the city manager, both to the city attorney, saved the city maybe hundreds of thousands of dollars in her astute analysis of legal issues. If you look at the Cemex plant, Gail is the one that introduced the Stanford Law Group to the then new city manager of Marina Coast Water District, a very capable city manager, Keith Vandemeter. Her collaborative work is very, very largely responsible for getting that last sand mining operation of any coastal area in the United States out of our hair. Fora, I would describe in the words of the old wrestling arena, let's get ready to rumble. That was basically what a Fora meeting was like. And Gail and Frank stood up against an onslaught of special interest and protected Marina's interest. Not only that, but she was largely responsible, as people have pointed out, for getting Fora out of here and saving the city millions and millions of dollars. Also getting $15 million of bond money freed up for blight removal. If you look at the Dunes development, she stepped forward and got a 4-lane expressway removed from a plan that would have bisected that development and ruined the walkability for that community. What I would encourage everybody to do is don't listen to all the barking from people like me, but watch the debates. You will probably appreciate, Gail's intelligence and her insight and a remarkable body of knowledge and skill that she brings to the table. You do not want to lose this treasure on our council. She may be the most effective collaborative leader that I have seen in local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Anybody else with public comment at this time? All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment. Some questions that came up from Danielle. Can you give an update, please, Lane, on the Martin Luther King artwork?
Sure.
Lane, would you like me to take that?
Yeah, Terry, that'd be great.
So, okay. So knowing the priority that the council placed on that, the commission and a lot of work has been done. So let's just go down the items. So the sculpture has been delivered to the art studio of Barrington McLean for restoration in Santa Cruz. And I want to thank our public works crew for getting that sculpture down to Barrington so he can refurbish and restore the bust. So that work is being done as we speak. Secondly, one of the 4 panels was damaged and we had to find a replacement. That replacement is in black granite, which is only found in India. We've located a piece of black granite working with Andrew from the Art Monuments Company in Hayward here in the United States, and we're restoring that panel in order to get the proper black granite, the proper lettering on the panel, and get that totally restored. So that as well is happening as we speak. The Marina Foundation has assisted in finding, or we think we found a donor to support the site prep and the restoration of the reflection pool and the bust once we find a site. Frank has worked with Monterey Salinas Transit for permission if it comes to that to put the sculpture possibly on the MST site. We've also been in conversation with Monterey Regional Park District, and they've also given permission if such the community would like the location to be at Loch Padden. They've given permission for that opportunity if that so comes to pass. And the chair of the Rec Commission and I, through Lane's guidance, have put a draft agenda together as Lane requested, as council requested that we engage the Recreation Commission to work on this project. So we have a draft agenda and we're looking at a tentative date of October 14th to provide that agenda and commission meeting to the public. So we're excited, we've been working hard, and we've taken serious the public and the council's request to move that along. That's your update.
Thank you, Terry. And along the same line, Danielle asked for an update on the bias study.
Right now, all of our time is being focused on the CalN hearing. So we haven't focused on that yet. Chief Nieto can probably let you know some things that they're doing in their police department that may be interesting.
Hi, so we've been in the national news on a few articles regarding our transformational change project. And we actually addressed some of those issues during the project, because to become a better police department, you kind of have to look at everything, including the warts. And I'm not going to get into it because I've talked about it in prior council meetings. But we were working on some of that stuff. In addition, Eddie Anderson, I spoke at the last council meeting at the same time that Aaron Widener came out with his article in Police One. Eddie Anderson's article came out that same day, ironically, and really kind of talked about, treating the community the right way. He didn't say that, but we, in Marina Police Department, we consider ourselves guardians, not warriors. So we've already done work on the police side. In addition to that, all the legislative changes that have been made that were voted before the session ended, Marina Police Department was already following certain rules that have passed our legislation. Other stuff failed in the legislative session, but I can tell you as the police chief, I am watching that closely to make sure that we stay in line with what we consider best practices for policing. So I do look forward to, as we move forward, but the water is the most important issue right now for Marina, to take a look maybe, at the city as a whole.
Thank you very much, Chief Nieto. And then Danielle asked about diversity trading and inequities, but is there anything more that, Lane, that the city is doing in that realm?
No, we put out some initial feelers and wasn't quite the direction that we wanted to go. We've reached out to the California League of Cities, and they have actually implemented a program called Race Program, and we've participated in that webinar as a staff, and they've linked up with the National League of Cities, and it's a program that does training exactly like that. So we have looked at that on the staff end, and once we get past the Coastal Commission hearing, that will then we'll be able to have a lot more bandwidth to start focusing on that. But people can go to the California League of Cities and Towns website, and they can click on that webinar presentation, and they have a lot of information regarding that is very beneficial.
And this is Chief Nieto again. One thing I want to add for the public that they may not know this, but the police department has to do diversity and illicit bias training every 2 years. That's legislated or it's mandated by post. And so our whole department's been trained in that area. So we do look forward to what's new and improved and the other stuff that we can do. But I can tell you, since the really focus was really on our police department, that's already being done despite the water issue that we're working on now as a city.
Thanks again, Chief. Thank you, Lane. Okay, let's go to City Council Brian and staff, Brian McMinn, and then Councilmember Berkeley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just a couple announcements. The question of a secure ballot box for dropping off ballots for the election has come up a number of times. County's provided a box, and it's been installed over by the community center at 211 Hillcrest. So if you call into the parking lot, you looked at the community center where it says community center on the side of the building, it's right below that lettering on the wall. So residents can drop off their ballots there. And wanted to thank Jeff Perrine and Marina Locals United for the flags that went up on Labor Day, and they made that possible. So, and that's all I have.
Thank you, Brian. Councilmember Berkeley.
Yes. Okay. I've got three things. And the first one, last week I did I recited a land acknowledgement around the issues of social justice and honoring the indigenous tribes that were on this land before we were. And I wanted to give a shout out to Karen Anderson, who actually was the one that brought it to council. This is such an important aspect of how we move forward as a community and as a country. So I believe it will be brought back next week. I'm still researching to be sure we have all of the names of the correct indigenous tribes that were here. So I just wanted to follow up on that. That's one thing. And then the second thing, and if Matt could share the screen, tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock, there will be a Voices of Women in Leadership event. Myself and Jacqueline Simon will be the co-hosts of this event, and we will be highlighting some very powerful female voices within our community, both here in Marina and also Seaside and Salinas. So it will be Tanisha Dunn, who is running for Seaside City Council, Ana Velasquez, who is running for Soledad Mayor, Rosalind Green, who is an activist, Monica Kim, who's also a human rights activist, and also Rosalind sits on MTC board. And then Mayor Pro Tem Morton, who is running, as you've already heard this evening, for council, and Queen Tay, who is a revolutionary poet, and Audra Walton, who is running for MPUSD for what was formerly Wendy Rudasky's seat. And that's it. And if you see on the bottom of the screen, you can go to register for this event at tinyurl.com/VOWIL, which is Voices of Women in Leadership. So again, it's tinyurl.com /VOWIL. So I hope you can join us. It should be a very interesting discussion tomorrow. Then the last thing is that on, let's see, on October, hold on one second, yeah, October 3rd, Marina in Motion will be having their regular election debates. And this will be debates for City Council and MPUSD. That will be October 3rd at 10 a.m. until 1:45. And you can watch it either, well, you can watch it on AMP on channel 25. And then if you want to learn more, go to marinainmotion.org, and there's a flyer on there. And then you can submit any questions you have a week in advance and also on that date. So marinainmotion.org, October 3rd, 10 a.m. to 1:45 on channel 25 on AMP. And that is it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I'd like to mention a redundant thank you to the volunteers almost every day of the week giving out food. Someone called me last Monday, I guess it was yesterday, to let me know that there were cars for several blocks trying to get to the library's food distribution event on Monday. But it's never too redundant to keep thanking the volunteers who keep going out almost every day of the week except Sunday to give away food to hundreds of cars that are lined up sometimes for over an hour to get their chance to get that free food distribution. So it's really important to a lot of families in Marina, and it takes a large amount of volunteers from the Church of Latter-day Saints, the Marina Foundation, MPUSD, the City of Marina, and other organizations, the Thomas Carmen Food Pantry, the National Guard helping out the library. So lots of various groups, and not to underestimate the Monterey County Food Bank, because without them, I don't know that it would be very possible to do this without the contributions of food that they've been giving. I think Terry has said that we're into our 23rd week of this 6-day effort. So thanks to everybody for that ongoing immense offering. I wanted to say that the Cal-Am meeting this Thursday that others have mentioned is one of the most important meetings to happen in our history. And if anybody cares about Marina's future, this meeting on Thursday is a place that you could finally give your up to 1 minute. Doesn't have to be fancy, but it can be a very meaningful statement that you can make about what Marina means to you and why our coastal and water resources underground and above ground, including wetlands, are so important for us to protect. That's really all they need to hear at this point from members of the public. The public comment on Thursday, September 17th starts about 2 o'clock, but for individuals, you probably won't get to speak until 3 or 3:30. It's first come, first serve. And first come means signing up, as you've been told earlier tonight, prior to 5 p.m. tomorrow, Wednesday, September 16th is when you have to sign up. It can be a little bit daunting to even sign up, but it's made very easy by citizensforjustwater.org. So if you go to their website, they'll have someone that can walk you through it, and there is information on their website as well as the cities. But Citizens for Just Water is helping lots of people navigate this gauntlet of procedures to speak and be part of this Thursday's meeting. We're going to have a Citizens for Sustainable Marina event at 10 o'clock this Saturday. It's the first ever in history that we've had a caterpillar catch. There happens to be tens of thousands of caterpillars that are eating 35 oak trees that volunteers have been tending to since 2013 outside the Marina Library. But with this infestation of the oak moth caterpillar eating up our trees, we're going to get a nickel for every caterpillar that's gleaned from these trees to try to help these trees out. We're doing everything we can with a volunteer group at Citizens for Sustainable Marina to succeed in this volunteer oak woodland restoration project. So Saturday, this coming Saturday, 19th of this month at 10 a.m. outside the Marina Library. Last thing I want to say is there's been a great dance group, and I'm forgetting the name, so I'm going to ask Terry to remind me. It happens every Saturday, and I believe it's at 9 o'clock. Terry, can you confirm the name and the start time of the Vince DiMaggio Park open to the public free dance event?
I can help you with the time of 9:30 on Saturday, but I can't help you with their professional name. But
Yeah.
it is an excellent program. It falls under our new guidance from our health officer on virtual fitness, and we had a great time.
Yeah, they keep you 6 feet apart, and it's kind of like different kinds of exercise dance formats. It's very similar, and it's a lot of fun, and it's been put on by volunteers, and so it's a great way to get out, be safe, and get the exercise you need in the community, meeting new friends, hopefully. All right, so we'll now move on to the rest of our agenda, which is the consent agenda, starting off.
Mr. Mayor, I'm
yes.
sorry to interrupt you. I see Mayor Pro Tem Morton having her hand up just now.
Okay, go ahead, Gail. Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to follow up, and perhaps Lane, this is a question for you and or Terry. I know that we have announced over and over about the California Coastal Commission hearing on Thursday and asking, we sent out postcards also notifying the public that this hearing is happening. I'm trying to find out and have announced tonight if there are hot spots such as our library, the parking lot outside of City Hall, if there are hot spots where people will be able to access if they aren't able to do that from their own personal quarters where they are or where they live. That's often difficult. So do we have spots and or the ability to have the Rocky Hahn Center open 6 feet apart, anything like that?
So Gail, good question on hotspots. The parking lot at the teen center is a hotspot, and the parking lot at Preston Park is a hotspot in collaboration with MPUSD. So those are two locations that are clear hotspots.
Perfect. So the teen center on, do you have the address?
Yep, 304 Hillcrest.
And then the Preston Park.
The parking lot at Preston Park, and I'm not sure that address, but it's the big parking lot at Preston Park.
Okay, and then also how about at our city center on Hillcrest? Is that a hot spot? I know if you come to city council there, you get to log on.
Go ahead,
Yes,
Lane.
it is. However, and it's called Marina Guest, but I believe you still have to have a password to get in. And Terry, don't you have to have a password at those other Preston Park?
Currently,
Library?
Lane, the way that we have those set up, a password is not required, but just to confirm, I will check with the superintendent. But as I understand it in the work that we've done, passwords are not required for those two.
So I do know that earlier one of the speakers asked that you put the connection on the front page of our website. And if there is a password for City Hall use of our hotspot, would you also be sure that's there? And identify the other locations. And lastly, perhaps check with the library. Thank you.
We'll definitely do that. Thank you.
Can do.
Thank you very much, Terry and Lane.
Yes, ma'am.
I think we lost Bruce. Should we just go on?
Hey, Miss Mayor Pro Tem, this is Tina from the police department. The police department's also a hotspot, so you can log on, but you can't come into the lobby, but you can do it from outside because kids actually come there and use our hotspot quite a bit, actually.
Okay, great to know. And that is across the street from our city offices.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so those are locations. I just want to be sure that we get that communication out to the public and assist the public in participating in this monumental public appearance. So is the mayor back?
Yes,
Great.
So my computer crashed and I'm trying to get that back, but meanwhile I'm on my telephone, so we'll do the best we can. Okay, if anyone else wants to comment before we move on to the consent, this would be the time to do that. All right. This is not so easy with the phone as it is with the laptop. So we'll move to the consent agenda, which is a chance for everyone to make brief comments or questions or request polling something for a deeper dive into discussion. Does any member of the public wish to make any comments or questions on our closed session agenda?
Session or consent? I think these comments would be on the consent agenda.
Yeah, I said closed session by accident. Yes. And help me out, Matt. Is there anyone with their hands up? Because I can only see the panelists on my phone for some reason.
No hands are up.
No, Mr. Mayor. Yeah.
Okay, let's go to then City Council. And if you could raise your hand on Zoom, I'll be able to see you. I can't see your pictures right now altogether.
No.
Okay, is it correct that nobody has their hands up?
No
Correct.
hands.
All right. I'll motion that we approve our consent agenda.
Second.
All right. Does any member of the public wish to comment on that motion to approve our consent agenda? And Matt, can you confirm that nobody's raising their hand for me, please?
No one.
There are no hands raised.
Okay. Can we have a roll call, please, Anita?
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martin,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. That motion passes unanimously with the 4 of us present, and it moves to the next step, our Gloria Jean Tate pump track.
Mr. Mayor, as a point of order, wouldn't it be advisable to let the Mayor Pro Tem become the host until you get your computer back up, since you're having difficulty recognizing who is asking for attention?
I think
Just a
we're
thought.
okay. At this point, I'll be back on the computer in a moment, but our next item is a public hearing, Frank. And so it's going to be a while and I'll be on that, shortly back on. So let's then move to our public hearing regarding our urban stormwater quality management, and who will be leading us in that regard.
I'll be doing that, Mr. Mayor. Edry.
Hello, Adri, and good evening.
Good evening, sir. And thankfully, I have no visuals. But the amendment to Section 846 of the City and Municipal Code is really an amendment to a 2009 ordinance adoption, which was in the title for health and safety regarding our urban stormwater quality management and discharge control in the city. At the time, it was in compliance with the current permit that the city has with the federal government issued through the state. But now with the 2013 adoption, reviewing our ordinance, the Central Coast Regional Water Quality Control Board found some issues that needed to be addressed, specifically in terms of legal enforcement. So the amendments to the current contract, or to the current ordinance, as shown in attachment B of the agenda packet, really shows more legal teeth, you may say, in terms of enforcing what the city has been practicing since 2009. And it doesn't really change any of our current policies, it just reinforces them into the ordinance. Specifically, our construction best management practices, our post-construction best management practices, and overall reporting to the regional board. This has been in response to a notice provided to the city as attachment or exhibit A to the staff report in the council agenda packet. And with review with regional board staff, the amendments as shown here tonight in exhibit B are in conformance with their regulations. And as we will be presenting these amendments to the regional board in our annual report submitted in October. We're open to any questions.
All right. Thank you very much, Edri. Are there any questions for Edri at this time from council members before we open the public hearing? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. So let's go ahead and open the public hearing. And would anyone like to speak to this matter? All right, I'm not seeing any hands going up. Can you confirm that, please, Matt?
That's correct. No hands are up, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, then we'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council, how would you like to proceed? Do you have any comments, or would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make the motion.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Yes, we've now had a public hearing and took testimony from the public, and we are introducing ordinance number 2020 for the first reading by title only, and waive further reading, amending chapter 8.46 regarding urban storm water quality management and discharge control in the city of Marina to align the local ordinance with state requirements as set forth in the attached exhibit.
Second.
Okay, thank you for that motion, Gail, and Councilmember Berkeley for your second. Does any member of the public wish to comment on that motion? All right, seeing no hands raised, let us then go to a roll call vote, please.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. All right, thank you. That motion passes unanimously, and there's a lot of behind the scenes work that Edry's been doing and other staff for years. So thank you, Edry. We know how hard and complicated this is, but you're doing a great job. All right, so now we're going to move on to our action items. And the first of those is for us to consider a resolution changing the date and time set for a special hearing to hear from applicants and make an appointment on City Council to serve through 2022 to replace former council member Adam Urrutia. So who will be leading us through this?
Bob Brackey will be doing that, Mayor.
Well, okay. Yes, this matter concerns the special meeting that the council discussed previously as far as setting a special meeting to consider the applications for those persons who have applied for the vacant seat on the city council that was occasioned by council member Urrutia's resignation. Resolution 2020-109 set the date for that special meeting to be September 19th. And we've since determined, that was a Saturday, we have since determined that that date is not a convenient date for many people, and that it would be in the public interest to have the council consider setting a new date, and also to establish the time for the special meeting to consider the applications, hear presentations from the applicants, receive public comment on those applications, time for council to ask questions, and then conduct a voting process, which would possibly and hopefully result in the appointment of a member of the city council who would serve the remainder of council member Urrutia's term, which would be until the November 2022 general municipal election. So that would be the recommendation. And I believe that staff has identified availability. Is it Wednesday, the 23rd of September at 6 p.m. as the alternate date? I believe that's correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. And so that would be the matter before you. It would just be amending resolution 2020-109 in two respects to change the date from September 19th to September 23rd and set the time of 6 p.m. That's all I have.
All right. So I'll motion that we rescind our prior resolution and accept this one to reset a new date and time to be September 23rd at 6 p.m.
Second.
All right. Does any member of the public have any comment on this item? Let's go to Brian McCarthy. Welcome back, Brian. Brian, Matt, can you help Brian out? I'm not getting the same screen I normally do to enable him to talk. Here we
Thank
go,
you,
Brian.
Mr. Mayor. Good evening, council. As you know, I have submitted my application for this vacancy and I look forward to your consideration. As I often do, I like to consider all the possible outcomes of any possible action. And so to that extent, I'd like to kind of simply ask some questions about bullet item number 8 that speaks to ballots will be counted by the deputy city clerk who will announce the votes for each applicant. Balloting will continue until an applicant receives a majority vote. I don't think this is true. I think balloting could possibly stop at some point. Maybe I'm wrong. And so if that's true, I'd be curious if maybe there needs to be a change in that language. And maybe the council could add a little bit of color as to how that might look. Is there a time cutoff? Is there a certain number of canvassing rounds that might happen before the council may call it a night? Hopefully you don't have that issue, but if you do, I just think it's always good to be prepared for any possible scenario or outcome beforehand. Thank you for your time. That's all for me.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Lisa.
For just point of order, the motion was about changing the date, not about what we're going to be discussing. So if we can keep it to that topic for public comment on this, that would be better, I think.
Okay, well, actually, because it's on a resolution, anything in our resolution or in our staff report is fair game. So can someone speak to number 8? I don't know if it's Bob Rathie.
But we would, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, we would expect balloting to continue. And if a resolution or an appointment was not made that evening, then I would assume that the meeting would be continued to a date certain at that time. So I think it would be premature to make a determination at this point as to how long you might want to go. I think that would be up to the council at the time.
Okay, thank you. And we have one more commenter, Paula Pillow. Good evening, Paula.
Good evening, Bruce. I'm not as assured as you are about the breadth of comments on this item. However, I just want to point out that, and this may be uncomfortable for some people, I don't know, but the city has had a history of scheduling meetings on the Jewish holidays. And I think that was in part, if not in total, the reason for the movement of this meeting. And I think that we need to respect those holidays going forward in all of our scheduling of all meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And you know what, if I was a Muslim or had a special holiday that was a religious one, you know, we need to try to be as respectful as we can. As far as the date set for this, we had a meeting and I think the 4 or 5
explanation.
I'm sorry, Paul. Okay, I don't know what happened there. But yeah, the 5 city council members did choose the first date, and apparently we overlooked that there was a religious holiday. City attorney, how do we account for potential religious holidays? Because there are, you know, a lot of potentials there.
Well, we normally would try to accommodate all religious holidays. So I think it would behoove us to keep calendars of that and definitely try to avoid those. Of course, there are certain holidays that are designated in the government code as statutory holidays, which we must also observe. So I think if council's direction would be to have the deputy city clerk and the administration department remain cognizant of the various religious holidays, and out of respect for all of them, to try to avoid setting our special meetings. Our regular meetings, of course, are set by council resolution, and if we can, to avoid those days.
All right. And Bob, as an educational moment, Paula referred to perhaps some question whether public comment could include the resolution language in referencing the public comments. Are we within the ballpark, sideboards letting people talk to the resolution language?
I think we are, because we've attached resolution 2020-109 to the staff report, which contains the section that Mr. McCarthy referred to.
So in general, points that are mentioned in our staff reports, those points are within the purview of the public to make comment?
On that matter on the agenda, I would think so, yes.
Okay. All right. So if we don't have any further comment, we'll close the public comment. Any final comment by council members before we go to a roll call vote?
Just thank you for that clarification.
Okay, thank you, Lisa. All right, Anita, can you please give us a roll call vote?
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. That motion passes 4-0. Thank you, staff, for rescheduling that, and to council for approving it. So now we move on to 11B, which is huge, and it's been in the works for years. And we'll move on to that. Who's going to lead us through the potential receivership of these land parcels along Imjin Parkway?
I will do that, Mayor.
Okay.
Matt, can you pull up those maps of the parcels, please? Great, thank you. As the mayor mentioned, for several years, the city of Marina has been in discussions with Monterey County about potentially transferring these properties to the city of Marina. And these parcels right here are what are known as the border parcels, and they border the landfill. These parcels are primarily open space properties, but some are ED, what we call is economic development conveyance parcels, and so they can have economic development on those parcels. They certainly have some restrictions because of endangered species, lack of water, and other conditions that will make them highly unlikely that they would ever develop. The interest of the council in initially acquiring these properties from the county is once we own them, we can ensure that those properties will remain in open space. And so that was a major priority in the interest of the border parcels. Now on the top of this map, you can see a parcel called E8A.1.2. That's where the Ord Market is. And that whole parcel is about 21 acres, and that is a development parcel. And so with this land transfer would also come that Fort Ord Market. Currently, they pay a lease to the county of about $11,000 a month. And so those lease payments will now come to the city as we would be the new owner of the property. Then up above that, you see E4.6.2, and that is next to Imjin Parkway. And we have a widening project of Imjin Parkway going on right now. And it's critical that that parcel come to the city so that we can complete the widening. And that actually has a deadline of October 5th that we have to have that property conveyed to us so that we can move forward and meet the Caltrans deadlines to be able to receive the grant money for that property. So those are the border parcels, and that's our interest in that. These are no cost land conveyances from the county. There are habitat requirements that are associated with that. There are certain endangered species on the parcels, and we'll have habitat management responsibilities that we'll have to develop a habitat resource plan and then provide the appropriate monitoring and long-term maintenance for that property. Now, we also will be able to use that property for habitat mitigation. So there may be other parcels in the city that we will be developing. And if we need to mitigate off-site, there's potential places on this property that we can mitigate. There's a lot of Sangelia on that property, and it gives us the ability, if we want to down the road, to mitigate off-site. We don't necessarily have to, but that gives us the ability to do that. Now, Matt, if you can show the next parcel. Is there? Yeah, that one there. So that one is called the landfill parcel. And that parcel would eventually also come to the city. Right now, it is still owned by the Army because the landfill is currently on that site, and the Army still has cleanup responsibilities associated with the landfill. And so the Army has an agreement right now with the county that when all that cleanup is appropriately done, then they would transfer it to the county. And so that agreement will change, and this provides that when the cleanup is completely completed, then the Army would transfer the property to the city. The Army, they have these what we call CERCLA covenants, which means that they are responsible for all the hazardous materials on that property. And so that is why they have to clean it up, and it could be another 5 to 10 years before they clean up that property. By law, they cannot transfer that property to the city until everything is cleaned up. Then the question was, what happens if they clean it up, they transfer it to the city, and then something is discovered that they missed? Well, under the law, the Army still has the obligation to provide for that mitigation and cleanup, and so that responsibility would never come to the city. Now, in our conveyance agreement, and that is one of the things that we're asking the council to approve, we had a tweak. We sent you an update because in the version that came from the county, they said that this landfill property had to go to be transferred to Seaside because they are the LRA. And then once it gets transferred to Seaside, it would get transferred to us. And we've talked with our attorney, Karen Tiedemann, and she says that does not have to be the case because Seaside is the LRA for ESCA purposes. This does not have anything to do with ESCA. And so if we can get direction from the council, or at least I think our motion is we wanted council to approve these transfers on these conveyance agreements and then give the city attorney, myself, the authority to do some of this final cleanup language with the county. But that was the one thing is when the Army is ready to transfer the property, it would be transferred directly to us and not to Seaside as the LRA. Now, one of the other things that the conveyance agreement provides for is $300,000 that the county will transfer to the city of Marina for part of our habitat management obligations with the property. When the Fort Ord Reuse Authority sunsetted, the various land use jurisdictions got some habitat money. The county got over $13 million of habitat money. And so with this conveyance back to us, we will have habitat responsibilities. They have agreed to transfer $300,000 back to us. We don't fully know exactly what the cost of the habitat management will be. It'll be more than $300,000, but we have other mechanisms in place that will help us to fund the long-term habitat management of the properties. The other piece that the agreement provides for is the transfer of 10 acre-feet of water to the city. This is mentioned in the quitclaim deed. It's also mentioned in the conveyance agreement. Now, the county really doesn't have the water right to this. What it has is a 10 acre-foot water allocation from FORA. And we all, when FORA sunset, there's this water allocation chart of all the different jurisdictions. And the county had an allocation that was called Marina, and then it had in parentheses sphere, and then it had 10 acre feet. And so in the agreement, the county is willing to transfer that 10 acre allocation back to the city. We will secure that actually with MCWD when we finalize our water agreement with them. And in that water agreement, it will include not only the existing allocations that Marina has, but it will include this additional 10 acre feet from the county. And That is what we're proposing tonight. This has been an interest of the county, of the council for several years. We worked hard on it. The county has been a great partner as we've worked through all the issues. And that concludes my report, and I'll take any questions.
All right, thank you, Lane. Lane, how might this parcel be used for extending any trail system from the equestrian center or other part of Marina, like Preston and Abrams Park, over to the south side of Inter Garrison Road and the Fort Ord National Monument?
Yes, once we own that, all that open space property, we certainly have the ability to put trail systems through there. Now, at the same time, we're also putting together habitat mitigation plans. The Sea Haven development has actually been working for 10 years with the Fish and Wildlife on a habitat mitigation plan in that area. And once we own it, the city will be able to determine really how we want to mitigate that. But we will be able to relocate trails, tag other trails to that property as long as we go around our habitat mitigation areas. We've also talked about the potential of trails to go through the actual landfill property too. And there is the ability to do that. We can't build or construct anything, but on a high level, as we talked about with the Army, that certainly is the potential depending on how we build that and how we put fences or things in place to keep people from wandering throughout the other parts of the landfill property.
Do we have any access, or are we completely restricted from doing anything on that large central landfill parcel?
Currently, right now, it is completely restricted. There's a fence all the way around that boundary, and that will always remain there.
Would we be on the hook for doing any restoration of eroded sites?
Anything that's associated with habitat, are you talking about the actual landfill property?
No, let's say south of the landfill parcel on 1.1.2.
Yeah, once we put together our habitat management plan, then we will, if it deals with erosion and things like that, then yes, that would be our responsibility.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's go to Mayor Pro Tem Gail Morton.
So to the trail system on the map that you have up, you can see the Sergeant Allen McDonald Trail coming in across S2.5.11 and dropping down all the way down, that connects our city's equestrian center to the Jerry Smith corridor. It does cross at the crosswalk that's now on Inner Garrison. And this area also is part of the Fortag Trail. There are some elevations here that enable great views, but still accessible by people in wheelchairs or people with limited mobility to get to this. This is part of that design. And as to the parcel E8A.1.1.2, that was the Whispering Oaks. That when that initially got designated in the reuse plan, that was for development. And that is where the MST was anticipating putting its administrative offices and parking, 15 acres of bus parking. And this was the subject of the referendum that saved this parcel for open space and this oak woodland. So it was completely slated for development, and it had 15 light industrial being planned there. That's been reversed, and that's now open space. To the lesson about the open space lane, not all of this, is my understanding, is within the habitat management plan requirements, that there's only portion of these acreage that is limited by the transfer from the Army as habitat management responsibility, correct?
That's correct. The part that is development we do not have to do the habitat management plan.
So while we're anticipating that it be maintained as open space and there may be costs associated with that, the outdoor recreation that this makes available to our city also will help generate funds that we're able to meet our obligations, would you think?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and Councilmember or Mayor Pro Tem Morton brings out a couple of good points. We have worked with FORTAG very closely as have worked through these issues, and they really do have a couple amazing high points as we have these rough designs of the trails through there that you can stand on those high points and you just have amazing views. You don't realize the views that you have until you can actually stand on these high points. And so we're kind of really excited that gives us the opportunity to incorporate that within our whole trail system.
Yep.
All right. So let's see. Would someone like to make a motion with which then we could go to public comment?
I would like to make the motion that we adopt the resolution for the transfer as set forth in our staff report, and with the addition that our city attorney and city manager are able to correct the transfer documents to correctly transfer the property directly from the county to the city of Marina, avoiding the incorrect recital of transfer to the local redevelopment authority. And with that correction, that's my motion.
And does that include the $300,000 to receive that money from the county and accept the resolution?
It does. It includes the water. I could read all of this. It's as written in the staff report with the additional language I recited, which is the water, which is the Habitat Conservation Plan monies coming from the county in support.
Okay, and the resolution attached to the.
Yes, thank you.
Sure.
I'll second.
Right. Seconded by Councilmember Berkeley. Let's move to public comment and start with Fred Watson and then Margaret Davis.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted.
Good evening, Fred. Yes, you are.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and council members. I really just want to, I'm here with Scott Waltz, who's also in attendance tonight. We're speaking as co-founders of the FORTAG project. Really just want to echo what Councilmember Morton and City Manager Long have already said, that for several years we've had a wonderful series of discussions, dreaming, planning FORTAG in this area. This is kind of where it all began for us, to try to create opportunities for trails and green spaces connecting through this parcel. There's a lot of moving pieces that have been mentioned. There's habitat management obligations, there's opportunities for mitigation of sea haven, mitigation of FORTAG impacts, connecting people to the beautiful landscape there, the views, the enhanced protection for the Sangilia that are there, the equestrian trails that are extensively through that area. So basically we support this. We're excited that it's finally coming to fruition, and we're looking forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. Margaret Davis?
Hi, am I unmuted?
We can hear you. Welcome back.
Thank you. This opportunity before you is a big deal for Marina. And for me personally, I worked hard to get hold of this land, and I gotta say it, working alongside Gail Morton. This began in 2011 when Gail Morton and I were going to the elected officials and jurisdictions to get a right-of-way from the Marina Equestrian Center to the National Monument. When we were making a presentation to County of Monterey Redevelopment Agency and University of California, Gail and I learned that a 58-acre chunk of the trail to the outback was to be developed as the headquarters for the entire Monterey Salinas Transit bus fleet for repair, nightly garaging, huge lights on all the time. And the road intergarrison between the college and the college housing was planned to become a major bus thoroughfare. So Gail and I co-founded a group called Fort Ord Rec Users, 4U, to fight this development, which was known as Whispering Oaks. Though Monterey County approved the use, we worked with Land Watch to circulate a referendum petition and got 18,000 signatures against it. Gail Morton was the chief strategist for this grassroots effort and organized the opposition and signature drive. After the dust settled in 2012, we followed through with the Monterey County Fort Ord Committee and with the State Department of Finance to exempt the Whispering Oaks property from the forced sale mandated with the end of redevelopment agencies. So that's why this issue is before us. I'm thrilled that Marina is in a position to receive this land as open space habitat and preserve all the essential trail connections, including Fort Tag. Thank you to everyone who had a part in this. And especially thank you, Gail. That's all.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Paula Pillow.
Good evening. I would like a little more clarity. First off, thank everyone for all the work involved in this. I know that this was a very long, difficult process. I have some specific query about the Ord Market parcels and the current tenant. And is there what is the length of that tenancy that we have to be mindful of at this point? I just am hoping that you can further explain what is on, looks like page 35. That's what the number is on the document, item D, where it refers to the first right of refusal, what that is exactly, what that means in the future, and for how long that tenant is protected, if at all, under this agreement in their tenancy, and what could happen after that there's a decision to move forward with a different development if that's what happens. If you could please give some clarity for that, that would be helpful. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Paula. And now let's go to Greg. Good evening, Greg.
I just wanted to give a silent golf clap to all those involved in this. This is kind of a monumental thing to get this open space dedicated. Well, there's a city manager who was Lane, Fred, Gail, Margaret, Fred's partner at CSUMB. I went to several meetings, and this has been a long time in the making. And it is, I think, huge for not only the community of Marina, but visitors to the area. So I hope you will move forward with this. It's an incredible accomplishment just because of the collaboration required and the hours and hours spent invested in trying to make it happen. So whoever's involved in it, hats off. Thank you very much. It's going to be an absolute asset for the city.
Thank you, Greg. All right. So anyone else wish to comment before we close public comment on this matter? Okay, and then we'll close public comment. And on page 35 of this item, there is a couple of paragraphs about under D, item D, paragraph D, concerning the current tenant at Ord Market. And Paula's question include, what's the duration of the tenancy? What's the duration of tenant protection? And can someone speak a little more to clarify how the first right of refusal works?
Sure, Mayor. And that was an important part with the County Board of Supervisors. The existing tenant at the Ord Market, his contract, it was extended by the county, and I believe the extension was to 2028. It may be 2030. And so he has an existing lease that goes to that point in time. And currently right now he owns about 2.5 acres, maybe close to 3 acres of the property.
Does he own it, Lane, or does he rent it?
Or sorry, he leases that property. And so his first right of refusal gives him the ability, if the city starts to develop some of that surrounding property, that he has a first right of refusal to put in a proposal for a development for that. And our attorneys worked hard with the county attorneys and with the Board of Supervisors to reach an agreement that would work with us. That first right of refusal is only as long as he has the lease. Once the lease expires, the city can develop that property however he wants. It allows him the ability to put in a proposal, but the city is not obligated to accept that proposal one way or the other. However, while he leases that, he does have that first right of refusal up to 2028 or 2030.
All right. Thank you, Lane. And we'll come back to council now. I want to echo what community members spoke in appreciation of everyone that has a lot to do with this. Gail, Margaret Davis, Lane, I know that staff has been working very hard for a long time, many months, maybe a few years on this. And this is the culmination of a lot of effort. So it looks easy on paper when we approve it, but there's years of effort behind it. Thousands of people were in support of not developing Whispering Oaks into a grand old bus and administration facility. And so we have it now to enjoy the rest of our lives, hopefully in perpetuity, for open space uses. And this is a big coup to make that turnaround. So thanks to everybody that were involved, leaders, followers, and thanks to staff.
Mayor, there's one other thing I forgot to mention. The agreement does require that we move forward as quickly as possible to try to annex the property. Initially, when we are having these discussions, and they've been going on for several years now, we had LAFCO at the table, and LAFCO wanted the annexation to happen concurrently. Then they came back and said, do the land transfer first and then work on the annexation secondly. And so we will be moving forward with LAFCO to look at annexing that property if we can. The advantages of once we annex the property, then the property tax from that property will come to us, and the agreement has the breakout of the property tax that will come to us and how much will remain with the county. But the other part that would come to us after the annexation would be the sales tax revenue that is generated from the gas station, which is rather substantial.
Lane, does it make sense? So this is getting a little bit off the agenda, but you brought it up. Does it make sense to annex this property first and then annex East Campus later, or do it all at once?
It makes sense to do it all at once.
So you'll be coming back as soon as staff can work its way to the top on this project to bring it back to us?
Yes, and actually, at the same time, we've had some requests even out with East Garrison of when we're looking at this annexation from their HOA that they potentially have an interest of annexing at that same time. That is way premature, but I just float that out there too, that we've had some requests from their HOA to potentially look at that also. So as we go down that path, we may be coming back to the council or the East Garrison HOA may be coming back and expressing a possible interest too.
And is East Garrison in our sphere of influence?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, Councilmember Morton. Thank you, Lee.
So just, Mayor, you did ask, the question was about annexing the housing, the CSUMB housing. But the other question is, the motion tonight, is it appropriate for us to give direction to staff to start the annexation as to this property? Is it, because it's not on the agenda, but can we give direction to staff?
Actually, it's in the details of the agreement. It is a requirement that we move forward,
Okay.
annexing that property as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you for answering. Great,
And
as
Lane,
long as it's there.
Thank you, Gail, for bringing that up. Lane, can you refer us to where it is in our agreement?
It's in the conveyance agreement.
Yeah, both the one in your packet.
Okay, if you can give me a page number, I don't see a table of contents or an attachment.
So page 33 is the conveyance agreement.
Yeah, it's on page 35, I believe, Lane. Recital or section C. City agrees to seek the prompt annexation of all property.
Great. Oh, and there it says, and East Campus and East Garrison. Okay. Just kidding, just kidding.
I don't recall that, Mayor.
Okay, all right. So I guess we're gonna go to public, we've come to public comment, we're gonna go to a vote. Anita, if you could help us.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Martin,
A big shout out as yes.
Mayor Delgado.
2 thumbs up, yes. Thank you, everybody. Wonderful progress. Thank you. Special shout out to Scott and Fred and anyone else that had anything to do with this. That's a great moment.
Mayor, could I also give a shout out to the county? The county really worked really well with us on that. Their staff people, Melanie Beretti, Carl Holm, they did a phenomenal job. And so we appreciate all the years that they've also really worked hard on this project.
Thanks for bringing that up.
I would give a shout out to Miss Beretti as well.
So 2 parties, and we know what was going on our side, and there's a lot going on their side too. So great for you to recognize the county and Gail and Lane. Thank you very much. All right, so now we move on to Imogen Parkway, kind of a couple of cleanup items. Lane, who's going to walk us through this? Brian?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm Brian McMahon, Public Works Director. So this recommended action will allow acquisition of right-of-way needed for the Imogen Parkway widening project, where we're kind of reaching the end of the rope here on this process with Caltrans and the state. We had a little bit of a reprieve due to COVID-19, but we're approaching an October 15th date when we need to submit paperwork to Caltrans demonstrating that we have the right-of-way cleared and we have the utilities cleared. So those are our funding is, to get on the agenda for the California Transportation Commission in December and make our deadline for the construction funding. So as the project plans were being developed, areas requiring right-of-way dedication, slope easements, and temporary construction easements were identified. Those properties are owned by the Sea Haven Community Association, Monterey Salinas Transit, and the University of California Regents. Appraisals were prepared by Associated Right-of-Way Services for each parcel affected by the project. As of today, we know that Sea Haven has accepted the $500 appraised value for their slope easement and construction easement. Monterey Salinas Transit, they negotiated acquisition price of $27,000 for their right-of-way pieces. And at the time of writing the staff report last week, the University of California Regents, they had been made an offer of $43,300. They have since looked at it with some members of the Office of the President with experience in appraisals as well, and they have countered with an offer of $57,150, or a difference of about $13,700. Which sounds like a large percentage increase in there, but when we make these offers under the California Code, the property owner has the option of requesting $5,000 to perform their own appraisal. So if you factor that in to that difference there that they would have been entitled to, they're less than $4,000 above that on their offer. So the action basically allows Lane and his delegates here and staff to complete and sign the purchase and sale agreements, to sign acceptance for the deeds for the properties, and allows for finance to transfer funds into escrow to complete the payment for the property transfers. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have.
All right. Brian, what exactly has to be done by October 15th, and how likely are we to meet that deadline?
By October 5th, the language that we're putting into the purchase and sale agreements is that the possessory clause states that we would have possession once the purchase and sale agreement is signed and the funds have been deposited in escrow. So we have quite a bit of control over that. The one that we're kind of walking the tightrope with is the UC Regents. So they're a bureaucracy and they have their people that have to sign off on it. So we're working through some language on that. They have concerns about releasing contingency as part of that. So the possessory clause will probably state something to the effect of signing a purchase and sale, transfer into escrow, and them releasing contingency. And we've been working with the regents fairly closely over the last couple of weeks. I had 2 or 3 meetings with them already, and you know, they've looked at their process and they believe that they can have their end completed by September 25th. We're really shooting for September 30th.
Great, thank you. Okay, well, I'll make the motion to go to public comment that we adopt the resolution before us and authorize the actions necessary to record the grant deeds on behalf of our city with the finance director, transferring funds for the purchase agreements for the accounting and other budgetary entries needed.
Second.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to public comment. Does anyone wish to speak to this matter of the MGM Parkway? Okay, seeing no one, let's come back to council. And if we can have a roll call, please, Anita?
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes, and that passes unanimously. Good luck, Brian. We're definitely behind you, hoping.
I'm looking forward to getting a good night's sleep, hopefully on October 5th.
We're hoping for a good night's sleep this Thursday. So we'll get ours first, I think, hopefully. All right. So we're going to move to green waste recovery and the rate adjustment calculation for collection of solid waste and our recycling items. And who, Brian, will you lead us through this?
That will be me again. Mayor, council members, the city entered into a franchise agreement with Green Waste Recovery in 2014. And at that time, there were some unknowns and assumptions that had to be made when establishing the initial rates in green waste proposal. As part of that understanding, there was provisions put into the franchise agreement that would allow for an audit and cost-based rate adjustment at some point in the future once there's enough data available to do that audit. I think that the thinking at the time was that cost-based rate adjustment would probably happen, you know, somewhere around the 5-year time frame, which is kind of where we ended up. So as we were looking at the data from the 2017 and 2018 rate year, there were indications that it's likely that a surplus was due to the rates exceeding the cost of providing the service. So on January 16th or at January 15th, council directed staff to request a cost-based rate adjustment. And on January 16th, the city made that formal request per the franchise agreement to Green Waste. A lot of back and forth, and ultimately it ended up triggering the cost-based rate adjustment for all 7 agencies because of the work that was going to have to go into it on Green Waste side. They just felt like they might as well adjust all of them at one time. So so the audit took quite a considerable amount of time. This is the first time that they've done a cost-based rate adjustment, and that kind of trailed off into the 2020 rate adjustment, which was included in the analysis. So what I'm presenting is the 2019 and 20 and the 2020 and 2021 rate adjustments. The 19 and 20 was the cost-based, and then the 2021 reverted back to an index-based rate adjustment, which we've been doing for all the other years. The analysis showed that there was a surplus revenue of $540,298 for the 1920 rate period and $258,203 for the 2020 to 2021 rate period. So looking at the surplus and kind of projections on where costs could be going in the future. If we just left the rates where they were, it could take 3 to 4 years for that surplus to be exhausted, maintaining the rates at what they are currently set at. So some of the things that we're looking at coming up in the future and things that are already happening that are going to affect rates, you know, having to increase going forward is the Monterey Regional Waste Management District recently opened their municipal recycling facility. And that came online at a time there was a $40 per ton recycling credit that was granted to the agencies due to changes in the markets and some tightening up of requirements from China, where a lot of the recyclables were processed. It's no longer feasible or cost effective to operate the MRF with that $40 credit. So they increased it and started charging for a per ton for the recyclables for people that aren't member agencies that were making deposits at the landfill. And they kept it, they went from a $40 credit to zero last year for the member agencies. And this year, the Waste Management District approved a $40 per ton charge. So those costs are going up, and that's kind of, we expect that to continue going forward. There's also a lot of changes that are going to be coming in relation to Senate Bill 1383, the requirement to divert organics from the landfill, and by you know, going up to 75%, I believe, in 2025. So there's going to be a lot of costs associated with that as we try to sort through how that's all going to be handled. So that's one of the reasons why staff was not recommending that we reduce rates at this time. Might be a reduction in rates followed fairly closely by an increase in rates for the ratepayers. But we wanted to come to council before we sat down with Green Waste and get some input on how to handle the rebate surplus. Does council want to hold that in an account? You know, something we need to get set up that will bear some interest. Or is there interest in rebating that surplus sooner than it gets exhausted? And the other thing that is going to be affected by this is the franchise fees that the city collects are based on, you know, the rates that are set as a percentage. So there will be some adjustments to that as well on the city side. So with that, I'll open to questions from council.
Questions, council? Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Morton.
So on our staff report on page 3, Brian, you set out 3 choices, and one of them is a rebate, and you make the comment, some rebates may go unclaimed, landlords may not pass it on to tenants. So the question, were you envisioning that there would be checks mailed?
That's kind of, yeah, that was the envision. That's the envision in the rebate or refunding of that surplus.
So the question that I have, I get that you've calculated increases based on the tonnage for recycling, and then the fact that the Senate bill is going to go up. The question that I have as I'm sitting here is ratepayers that overpaid in 2018 or 2017 or 2016, by 2020, when we catch up, they're not getting any break. How are we being equitable? And it may not be able to attain that, but that came to the surface. And so my question is, would it be an option to give a credit on ratepayer bills? So if I got a garbage bill for $40 and I get that the Green Waste doesn't want to take a hit all at once, but give me a $10 credit. And I'm asking this because we're in COVID and people are struggling. And so every $10 a month means something currently. So I'm looking for if there's some mechanism where people benefit today. And because you're giving the credit on the bill, you don't have to go pick anything up or cash anything.
Yeah, definitely an option we can explore.
Thank you.
All right. Well, would someone like to make an emotion and then we would go to public comment? Oh,
I do have.
stop there. Go ahead, Frank.
Thank you.
O'Connell.
Brian, first of all, thanks for answering my questions I submitted to you. And you indicated, however, that the cost of processing the rebate is unknown. Would you have any type of an estimate?
Boy, I haven't even approached Green Waste on that. Whatever, administrative fee that is for cutting the checks and doing that calculation. We'd have to ask them if there's a similar cost associated with getting a credit on their bill as well. I just don't know. Yeah.
Thank you. We have not approached Green Waste as to the possibility of what Mayor Pro Tem Morton referenced, giving a credit or lowering the bill, or actually not sending out a bill until these funds are exhausted.
Yeah, all things to be explored with Green Waste. I'm not sure where they're going to be on the cash flow end of it, but we'll have to figure out what that's going to look like with them.
I'm favoring either a credit or just giving the money back to the people at this time, but I'm a little concerned about the cost of process. When you said in number 1, it says leave the rates as set on June 5, 2018. Are you indicating that the rates would stay at that rate until the funds are exhausted?
Yeah, that would,
subject to change in laws.
if we didn't have any sort of credit or rebate on their bill, even as it is now, yeah, there wouldn't be a need to increase or the rates right now.
Okay.
In fact, I think the rate setting for this period, that's why we had a surplus for this period. It was like a 6 to 7% decrease at this point.
When is the next regularly scheduled rate adjustment?
That would come July 1st of 2021.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Frank. We'll go back to Councilmember Morton.
So Brian, something you just said is about if you leave it in there as a surplus, that our rates across the board, everybody would stay at 2018 rates, correct?
That's correct.
So if we're adding 137 houses per year, and so new people are coming online to be serviced, they would also benefit from what I and other ratepayers overpaid in 2018, 2017. So that's the equitable portion that I'm trying to address with the credits, if it's feasible, and also because to Councilmember O'Connell's is if you're not paying for postage, you're not sending things out, it's just appearing, it's an accounting issue internal. So I would like to make a motion that we receive the report on the rate adjustment calculation for the franchise collection of solid waste, recycling and organics by Green Waste Recovery, and consider multiple options with Green Waste and have those options come back for further analysis by council and decision.
I would second that, as long as if you take a friendly amendment to make sure that at that time, the cost of processing the rebate be disclosed.
Yes, I assumed that was in the discussion. So I was looking at what would be the cost of the rebate. Is it feasible to do a credit? What would be the cost of that?
Thank you. Second.
All right. Thank you both. Brian, is there any deadline we have to meet in coming back with options?
Not really at this point. I mean, the surplus is going to sit there until we figure it out. You know, we don't want it to go too far down the road because then we're going to be looking at the next rate setting period coming up. That we'll start looking at that probably early next year. But so that's kind of the time frame we're working with. We if there's anything that's going to happen with the rates, basically we need to know before June 1st, because there's a month noticing that Green Waste has to do for rate changes that would go into effect on July 1st.
Okay. Well, it's good that we continue moving on this. And it's also good that we don't have to do it within a week or two. It's nice. Okay, let's go to public comment. We have a motion on the floor, and we'll start with Denise Turley. Hello, Denise.
Thank you, Bruce. I have a whole bunch of questions just generally, but we'll consolidate it into one question. Is there, other than the phone number, and which of course isn't answering because of COVID, you just, no one's in the office, and the website, which you get information from, and when you can get through on the number, they argue that it's not there. What's the next step for a person who needs specialized services, has questions? Is there, like at the water district or some other places, customer service you can email your question information? Is my question clear?
And it's not clear to me, Denise, so you're asking where to go for a specialized service regarding garbage and recycling?
Correct. If we can't get through on the number and the website doesn't provide the information, is there a customer service email place we can go to? Is there, I hate to go to a board meeting, but I would be willing to do that. There's a couple of issues going on for the surplus right now. I'd actually like to see an increase in services in a couple of little categories that would be mutually beneficial to actually Green Waste and the customers of Marina, both individual houses and multi-level properties. And so I have this idea. It can't be answered by the existing information that I have. What's the next step? And maybe Brian just has an email address could send.
Yeah, Lisa, Denise, you still have a couple minutes. I don't want to cut you off if you have anything more to say.
That's my only question. I want to keep things moving.
All right, thank you, Denise. And we'll get right back to you as soon as public comment is over. Anybody else wishing to provide public comment tonight? Paula, hello, go ahead.
I appreciate the motion and the intent behind it to be equitable. I also want to point out that no matter how you do this, there will be some inequities, because if the garbage is folded into someone's rent and they have left here, no matter how you do that rebate, whether it's electronic or by check, it's going to perhaps go to a landlord who actually is receiving the benefit of that on top of the rent that was paid to them that included it. So there's always going to be some inequities of this. So I hope that when you do look at this going forward, that you recognize you're not going to be able to remedy all of those potential inequities. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Anybody else with any comment at this time? Okay, we will close public comment. And Brian, where can people like Denise go if they're not getting through on the website or calling the office of Green Waste Recovery or Alliance, their property manager?
Well, I'll take it up with Green Waste. That shouldn't be occurring. They should be manning their customer service lines, and they shouldn't be dropping calls like that. So they do have a service request form on their website. if you go to greenwaste.com, there's on the top bill, there says service request. So there is a web version where you can submit a request electronically to them. But I'll definitely be following up with them because they're required to provide that customer service under the franchise agreement.
Great. And then Brian, how might you be available to hear public's ideas for specialized service? Because that is an option we didn't consider tonight, and that would be using the surplus revenue in Denise Turley's idea of increased service, specialized service. But anyway, I think she was asking how she might get a hold of you to talk about this offline.
Yeah, she can call 884-1212, and that'll get her into our office. She can also email me at bmcminn, MCMINN, @cityofmarina.org. And yeah, it's good that she's bringing up any ideas for service changes at this time, because the way the franchise agreement's structured, changes like that will have to be negotiated into some sort of amendment. And with a lot of the SB 1383 changes that are going to be coming down the line, it's likely that we're going to have some form of amendment in the works.
All right. Brian, in your experience, and maybe Lane too, were we to give a discount or a credit or a rebate, and then in June raise their rates, do customers usually end up more satisfied getting their rebate first and then getting the rate increase later? Or are they most satisfied if you don't raise their rates so much when you do, because you're utilizing a reserve from prior surplus?
Well, it could vary from individual to individual. It's just hard to say. I'm always happy to see a credit or money coming my way whenever that is. And I think we've held the rates, since 2018. They haven't gone up, and not everybody's necessarily aware of that because they're not seeing, the insert in there that says rates are going up, but they just see the regular bill going from month to month. But for some people, there's some out there that will be aware of that.
Okay. I know that the organic facility is going to have to be indoors, and it's going to cost somewhere between $40 and $90 million. And so that's going to have to be passed through to ratepayers for that. But we'll cross that bridge soon. All right. So 884-1212, Denise. I won't repeat Brian McMinn's email, but you can get it slowly. And if you call 884-1212 and want to email Brian some of your questions, if he can't talk to you when you do call. So thanks, Denise, for that comment, and Paula. All right, so we'll come back to council. Any comment before we go to a vote?
Just a quick comment, just to Paula Pelot's point, the Preston and Abrams Park, if Preston is paid by the city, the bill is, the rebate would come back to us as the owner of the property. It comes out of the budget. I get that the tenants, and I apologize for that to the tenants.
So is it true that the tenants at Preston and Abrams don't pay for recycling or garbage directly, but that the landlord, the city, does?
What?
Brian, do you know?
Not sure what the arrangement is out there.
Lane, do you know?
No, I believe the tenant pays for their own garbage. At least I know for Abrams, they do for sure.
Would it be
That's
different?
what I thought. So I was trying to understand her comment.
So
This is Tina, and I lived in Preston and paid for my own garbage also.
And Paula, who's the Tenants Association president, maybe she's got her hand up, so maybe she wants to comment on.
Okay, well, according to Lane and Tina, who are residents there, the residents pay directly for their recycling and garbage. But let's turn it over to Paula on that question, Paula.
Yes, that is correct. I don't believe that Tina, the chief, is still a resident here, but I know the city manager is. And the tenants have always paid their own garbage bills. And that's one of the considerations when we do our rent formulation, that we take that and the water that other residents who rent properties elsewhere in Marina, it's rolled into their rent and we pay that on top. So it is always part of our rent formulation. So everyone in Preston and Abrams do pay their own green waste recovery bills.
Okay. All right. And is the same true for water and sewage? This is a little bit off topic, but it's a natural question.
Yes, yes, we
Same-
pay our
same
own water bills, and it's water, sewage, sewer, meter charge, all of it. We pay our NCWD bills and we pay the garbage bills both on top of the rent.
All right. Thank you, Paula.
So,
Go ahead.
just to follow up on that, the point is that if in fact you're giving a rebate, you're giving a rebate to the client database, a credit as of a particular date. So somebody that moved into apartment B the next, in 2020 or 2021, they would not be getting the credit. So that's not what I'm envisioning. I'm envisioning the person that paid gets the rebate.
So how do you follow, Gail, the person that moved out and get the rebate to that?
You're not going to be able to. That's the inequity. And that's what I'm acknowledging that Paula was trying to say. If you moved out of apartment B and closed your account, you're not going to get the rebate. But I want to make sure that my motion is understood. I'm not suggesting that new tenant in apartment B gets somebody else's money.
All right. Okay, so we can go to a vote now for the motion on the floor.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. That motion passes unanimously. And thanks to staff for working with Green Waste Recovery to come back to us and continue this item. All right, so we move to the last item on our agenda regarding a presentation on removal of old buildings, blight removal, funding, projects, and direction for priorities for that removal.
Okay, Mayor and members of council, I get to share this one as well. I'm going to attempt to do a share screen here. I have a presentation. So just kind of background, with the forest sunsetting and some work went on prior to that to get some bonding in place and for blight removal, and I'll go over that. But we're at a point where we're starting to see those bond proceeds, and need some direction from council on what priorities will be for blight removal, because as you'll see, we do have bond funding coming in, but it's not going to be enough to cover everything out there that's blight with the bond funding that's been identified so far. So let me try to share screen here. Okay, so the blight removal options, and what am I not doing right here? There we go. It took a little while to load there, but so the bonds that have been set up, there's a FORA bond trust that's set up. That's generates $8,561,968. There's a residual of $1 million plus or minus available in 6 months, which I think at the time we started talking about that, we're probably looking close to the end of the year here. And then there are escrow bonds of up to 6.5 million based on asset value growth until 2025. If you total those all up, that's $16,061,968 projected bond revenues that are going to be coming in for blight removal. I also added onto this stockade. We are removing the stockade, and that was 2.05 million that came from the FORA to the city to remove that stockade. So these first ones, I'm going to go through some projects, some underway, some that have been identified, and some estimates that went into these. Again, the stockade, 2.05 million. I think we're on track to do it for that or less at this point. So I'm hoping that we'll have a little bit of money remaining from that project to put towards other blight removal. There's I say 62 to 65 former Armory barracks there because there's, a decision point in here as we go through the discussions tonight. We've talked with the Dunes developer who has recently removed a bunch of the similar barracks and also looked over the estimate numbers that Fora had been working with, and we believe that's going to cost the city about $5.8 million to remove all those farmer Army barracks that are on city property. That's going to be the Dunes Park property, half a dozen up on CDEC Hill, and then there's other NPS property further south on 2nd Avenue, get closer to First Street for another type of parks development. Those are the barracks that would have to be removed from those properties. Cypress Knolls is a pretty big ticket, 260 duplex homes that served as housing. That I put on this narrative here, there's another option I'm going to talk about in relation to Cypress Knolls as well. But if we were to look to remove all of those houses, we're talking about $13.2 million for that hazardous abatement and removal, and that's based on characterization, study, and estimate that the city did on 3 of the duplexes out there a couple years ago, and numbers that Fora has been working with. So another option that council might want to consider is if we don't have enough money to remove all the barracks and Cypress Knolls right now. Would council be interested in removing what have been identified as 31 duplex houses along 3rd and Rendova, and setting back the fencing? Right now, the fencing is basically right at the back of walk, with some screening on the fences and a fence in various states of repair. It presents kind of an ominous corridor for anybody that's trying to approach the school from that side. So that would improve that situation there at 1.6 million.
Brian, if I can just jump in on that, the thought with that proposal or suggestion is, if you go along that corridor and you remove it in those boundaries there, you can pretty much eliminate all the visible blight as you drive up 3rd and drive up to the high school. And so the thought with that idea was remove just the homes that are visible, and the center part ones, because of trees and the way the hills slope, you don't see those. And so that's why we came up with that option, is just trying to get the ones so you can turn off Imgen, drive down there, drive up to the back end of the school and not see any blight.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I just ask a question about this picture? Is that
Sure, go ahead.
I can't tell if you're Brian and Lane, you're telling us we're taking the buildings out that are outside of the green blob or within the green blob. Can you just answer that so I can follow your conversation? Thank you.
Inside the blob has consumed the houses inside. Okay. There is a building south of the Equestrian Center, portion of a 2-story, the rest of it 1-story, that we're recommending that would be removed. We estimate that removal at $160,000. When council considered options for rebalancing the budget earlier this year, a couple projects were defunded in the CIP to help that were general fund funded to help balance that budget, bring us closer to balance. So one option that council might want to consider is refunding those. These were the Arts Village building stabilization at $1.35 million. That would be re-roofing that and stabilizing it for future development as an arts district building. So that one, we can't make any progress on that right now. We don't have that funding we used to have on that. And then there are the the barracks stabilization, 3 barracks identified for stabilization and eventual rehabilitation or reconstruction in kind, same kind of architecture to preserve examples of the architecture and the buildings that were there that served the military. 200,000 was removed from that project to help balance the budget. The city is still interested in preserving those buildings. We'd have to refund that project out of the bonds, the blight bonds, to move forward with that. Same thing with the Fire Station 3 roof. About 200,000 was deappropriated from that to help balance the budget. If we wanted to continue forward with that preservation, council may want to consider refunding that project at 200,000. There are other priorities that has been stated by the community and the council that we've been working on over the last couple of years or so. You know, does council want to look at using some of the blight proceeds to rehabilitate buildings for public reuse, which is a form of removing the blight? We've taken a blighted building, put it back into use, and potentially investments which achieve community goals. So one of those is the pool rehabilitation. We have presentations from our CATS architects and the group they put together. And they came up with an estimate of $8 million to bring that pool back online and reconstruct it with the facilities that that would best serve the community. And then there's the roller hockey building rehabilitation. That was one of their second phases of their analysis, and they estimated that putting that building into a recreational uses would be $5 million, and that $5 million includes that connector building between the pool and the roller hockey building. There's since we put money in the budget to stabilize the barracks for future rehabilitation or reconstruction, I'd asked an architect to take a run at this and see, well, what are we really looking at as far as costs? What can we anticipate to rehabilitate and or reconstruct these barracks to the similar architecture to meet the current codes and provide accessibility? And it was a sticker shock to me. They came back with it could cost as much as $6.5 million. You know, will it be $6.5 million? It could definitely be $4 million to $6.5 million in there. So we're really looking at millions of dollars to bring these up to current codes and make them places that make them accessible. For instance, on that 2-story building, there's going to have to be some sort of elevator or lift added to it to make the second floor accessible, depending on what uses the city envisions for those buildings. So I wanted council to be aware that there may be some big costs coming down the road if we continue to pursue this project, and wanted you to be aware of what those might look like. So those are the 3 buildings I talked about earlier. You know, if council wants to make a decision at this point to continue forward with them, or to say, well, don't put the money in stabilizing them, you know, that's where we would add 3 more to be removed in the barracks demolition. And that's the end of my slides there. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that council might have and receive direction.
Brian and Lane, what would you think about having a special city council meeting workshop with the public to get their input on where they would prioritize? Because we probably have twice as many dollars to spend as we have in our, you know, we probably have twice as much need as we have the money. So when it comes to prioritizing, stabilizing, and improving the roller city roller hockey, and removing the buildings for Tatum Park's playground to go in, or doing these other things, you know, they're all important. And we have an equestrian center building across the street from the equestrian center that that has some potential. So to get all these into the mix, it seems like it would be smart to have the public hear and be able to comment. Tonight was just kind of a quick run through, but it hasn't been well advertised. And yeah, so what would you think about having a future workshop on this matter?
Yeah, absolutely, Mayor. As we talked about it, this is really just our first blush to get this information out in front of the council at a high level to let you know that what we thought an estimate of the blight removal cost will be, because that's a huge priority of the city. But the way that the for bond language was written, it also gives us the ability to rehabilitate some buildings, and we definitely need some feedback from the council and the public on where these priorities are. We want to give you a sense of how much bond money that we think, and the 8.5 million, we have that right now. So we know that that's an absolute surety. Yes, escrow bond, we're pretty confident. The assessed value, that property is going to continue to grow. And while it's not guaranteed, we're pretty comfortable with that. But there's also other buildings that we didn't mention. For instance, the white church that is next to the Water City Roller Hockey and the pool building. So we've stabilized the outside of that, but probably for $1 million, you could rehab that, and that could potentially be a city facility that's open for public use, or different things like that. We definitely think it'd be good to have a more in-depth special meeting.
And did you mention if there's any restriction on us putting this money into the equestrian center?
No, it is the equestrian center. We can rehab and stabilize and all those buildings.
Yeah, so I would think that the public that visits the Water City and Equestrian Center might very much appreciate knowing about these options and weighing in. Okay. Other questions before we go to a motion? Would someone like to go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem Morton?
I'm sorry. So I did have some questions. So at this point, does city staff have any, other than the stockade, which we have to do and those are determined, any particular in these options that the city staff views as most critical and no other alternative sourcing of funds?
I'll weigh in, and then Lane can tell me where I'm at with that. But I think as far as the development of the Dunes Park, we've got some interested parties in moving on that, in the very near future. So I think at least a number of the barracks to allow the playground to go into on that Dunes Park. And I think we're going to have to remove the 6 barracks up on top of CDAC Hill, in the near future as well.
So I'll kind of jump on that too. We do have a group that wants to partner with the city, and we are in constant contact with them to do an all-inclusive park down there at our Dune City Park. And so that is certainly a priority. One of the priorities that we have out there is just visibility as you drive into our community, and all those blighted barracks at the dunes removed from CDAC Hill. It is just phenomenal, the difference that makes as you drive on Imgen. And we think it'll have that same effect on CSUMB. We know the university, that's a huge priority from their point of view to get the blight removed along there. So we think from a visibility, as well as we have some other entities that want to partner with us on the Dunes Park area. I think that's a really high priority.
Okay, so that's exhibit A1. Is that what I'm looking at? Is the green section below Water City and the pool building? Is that what you're referring to? As
Yes, Yes.
Second Avenue, the park.
That's correct.
And so you're talking about that the city staff believes taking out the 47 buildings that's inside of the green, maybe you want to put up, is how much money, Brian?
47.
Let
me do a quick calculation here.
I think the staff report we talked about those 47 buildings there being $4.1 million.
How many? I'm sorry.
I'm doing a quick calculation of like about 2.4 million.
Okay.
At,
And
at 50,000 at 50,000 each.
No, those ones are the 2-story. Those are 87,800 each.
Okay.
Okay. So that is how much now?
4.1 million.
Times
Okay.
47.
Okay.
Yeah, 4.1.
Okay. 4.1 million. And at that location, isn't the preservation items 3 of those buildings or 2 of those buildings on the most eastern side?
That's correct.
Well, the western side.
I'm sorry, the western side. Okay.
Yes.
And in fact, if we took down the buildings, we don't necessarily need to stabilize those 3 simultaneously. That would not be required.
That's correct. And that's why Brian showed that. It's always been a goal to rehabilitate and turn those into a museum, but the cost is huge.
Okay, but if we left them standing. So the other question that I have, when we redid our agreement or renovated our agreement with the dunes, there was some additional contributions that were to be paid to help us with this park. What are those funds? How and when might those be available? And would they be available to use to help get rid of this blight?
Yes, they can be used for getting rid of the blight. They can be used for actual development of the park. So getting rid of the blight could be that. The original agreement called for $3 million from the dunes. Then it was increased by the inflation amount over the period of time. And then with the phase 3 takedown, an additional dollar amount came. And I think we're looking at around a total of $8 million potentially will come to the dunes for that Dune City Park area.
Okay, so, and that Dune City Park area, that 8 million contribution could also be used if we decided in combination to rehabilitate the pool. It just happened to have that $8 million price fee.
Correct.
Okay, all right. So to the mayor's point, I guess the motion, I like the mayor's point about having a better understanding and workshop of all sources of funding. You know, what can we put into this in complement? And that barracks in that green square on Exhibit A1 brings up a lot of additional funding questions for me. So what kind of motion to have it be looked at more thoroughly with a meeting? What kind of motion do you need?
I think we just need direction to schedule a study meeting to provide more detail and options for these properties.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we schedule a study meeting with more details.
Gail, can you speak in your motion perhaps as a addendum to do some public outreach and have it be on a standalone meeting, you know, instead of part of another meeting, so that we could try to get as many folks to know about it and be present?
So yes, I'm understanding a special meeting to be a standalone meeting. Am I misunderstanding?
No, that's correct.
Okay, so that's to that point, Bruce, that this would be on this issue only. And then the other question that you had is about special outreach. What are you envisioning?
something besides the norm. You know, we haphazardly as individuals might post something on Nextdoor or Facebook or something like that. But, you know, I'm wondering how the city can communicate with the people that we have a somewhat extraordinary meeting to decide how to spend 16 to 22,000 or 16 to 24 million, I should say. Anyway, it's a big topic, and I'm sure people are going to have lots of opinions. So it seems a good example of a time that we should try to do some special outreach. And Gail, what do you think? How could we do special outreach?
So a notice, a letter, or we just sent a postcard. What was the cost of sending a postcard? It doesn't have to be multicolor. Just give me, you know, a range.
Matt, what's the mailing cost is really the largest expense.
I think the average has been, by the time we design a postcard to the reproduction and the mailing, it's been 4,000 to 5,000 per mailing.
Can it come out of the 24 million? Just kidding. And is there another way? Is there a more effective way? I mean, how do we communicate to people these days?
We can put it on social media, try to get it out there, but that's limited to some extent. We can talk with the Recreation and Cultural Services Board and have them try to do outreach on there. And they were very much involved in the pool and the rec center issue.
So I'm not interested in trying, you know, I don't want to be that we're spending $5,000 to $10,000 of money that we need to apply. So my question to you, Mr. Mayor, is that if in fact this meeting starts being announced constantly, like by Terry Seacrest when he comes in with every other announcement, that we're announcing this meeting constantly, that the city just has a flyer, they put it on the front after we get through the 17th. I'm sure the front page of our city website might have some space, and that at every city council meeting, it's included in the announcement that this is going to happen on November 1st or whatever date it is. Would that be satisfactory, Mr. Mayor, for your concerns?
Yeah, I think you're on the right track. And I think maybe our best bang for our buck would be to make direct contact with the leaders of all the groups we know about and urge them to pass the word in their group.
And I think the Recreation and Cultural Services Board, Commission, and Terry Seacrest has so many of the teams and the different organizations that are using that we could do that without doing a mass mailing.
Right. And I wonder if Monica Kim could contact the Rotary, the Kiwanis, the Water City folks, the equestrian folks, you know, all this list of organizations to let them know, Friends of the Marina Park, Citizens for Sustainable Marina, Friends of the Marina Library. You know, I think that that's probably the cheapest, though it's not free, it's probably the cheapest way to get the word out to most people. And having a flyer, a special flyer for the meeting, like Mayor Pro Tem said, that can be emailed to those groups so they can forward it to their folks. And that we do some kind of a, you know, make sure that we get a press release out to the Monterey County Weekly and the Monterey County Herald. We don't normally do those steps. And I think that those are fairly inexpensive steps with the flyer that Gail mentioned.
Okay, so the motion, the special meeting, we already addressed that took care of your addition to that. And then that the city would take reasonable efforts for outreach as described by a flyer, communications to users of our parks or the areas that we're talking about where money would be applied.
And community groups like Friends of the Marina Library.
Yeah, community groups, our commissions can then notify who they interact with.
What month are we thinking? 2020 or 2021?
Depends on what happens on Thursday.
Right. I'm just looking at our calendar, and we potentially could look at the last Tuesday in October, so October 27th.
You know, it might be best to wait for the new council because they're going to be dealing with this for their term. What do you think, Frank? You're not coming back. What do you think?
I would like to have input after battling for all these years. I'd like to be sitting there, but it certainly is reasonable to consider the new council making decisions on it. I would think that whatever decisions are made at this meeting would probably be followed up with additional meetings with additional decisions. So, but I'd like to have my input other than as a member of the public. Thank you.
Okay. So Elaine, you were saying a date in November, were you saying?
October.
October 27th. So that is the last Tuesday in October. So it's an off Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay.
And I do think that it's going to be more than one special meeting. I think we'll have a lot of engagement from the public, a lot of different ideas, and things that we may not even necessarily think about.
Okay. You know, I'm thinking of the equestrian center, the concessionaire might not be very successful if there's no money from us for the concessionaire to do all that we would like done there. And the same thing with the Water City roller hockey. So it'd be good to get those groups involved, I think. But, okay, enough said. All right. So Gail, can you reread your motions before we go to public comment?
Yes, I'm asking staff to set this matter for a special meeting as on October 27th and to bring back additional information as to the options and what other funding might be available to complement the removal of the blight at each of these locations as appropriate, and to do outreach, including a flyer to all of our local community groups, users of our facilities, our commissions, and the public.
Okay, and the second was by Frank, was it?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so let's go to public comment, starting with Les Martin. Good evening, Les.
Hi, thank you. First of all, great brief, Brian. I really appreciated understanding this picture a lot better. I recall when I first bought my house here in the Dunes, one of the very first things I asked at an HOA is, when are they going to tear down that stuff across the street? And the guy said, well, definitely not in the next year. And we laughed about that, but that was 3 years ago. So I understand you have a future meeting, so most of my questions are no longer necessary to say right now, hold them for later. I do agree with most of the comments I heard. I like that option going through Cypress Knolls to get stuff out of the view of the kids, if that's something you have to do. But one question I had is, if you're going to develop that area, wouldn't the developer tear that stuff down, much as they are doing for phase 3 for the dunes? The second question I have is, when is the phase 3 of the dunes scheduled to tear down that stuff? If it's not for 5 more years, that's unacceptable to me. And I think we need to pressure the developer to do it like right away. Even though he's going to develop it down the road, he can tear that stuff down now. I like the idea of taking down the city park stuff soon, not later. And I don't like keeping things for the future that we have no money to do them with. So that art center and that fire station, you know, they got to go. And if they're not going to go, they definitely have to be overhauled to make them look nicer, like you did the pool. But I don't think we can afford that. So I think those are things we'll discuss in these future meetings you're talking about. But great job on this brief tonight. I really appreciated it. And a lot of great comments from the entire staff there and the board. So thank you for that. Bye.
Thank you, Les. And we'll get to questions as soon as we're done with public comment. Grace Silva Santella and then Paula Pillow.
Hi, Mayor and Council, you can hear me okay?
Yes, welcome back.
Thank you. So first, thank you very much for the presentation. It was 20 plus years ago when I was on the Planning Commission and I was the chair that we organized a day-long workshop with all the planning commissions, including the county, from all of the Monterey Peninsula cities. And we met in one of the buildings out there at Fort Ord, and we were starting to talk about redeveloping. And this was all the planning commissions of all of the Monterey Peninsula cities. So it's frustrating to me, and I know frustrating to all of you that these buildings are still out there. And so I'm happy I'll do one more plug for Mayor Pro Tem Gail Morton. I am very happy that there was so much work done in her position with the FORA board that got this moving along for us. I am going to say that I am very wary of any general funds money that would get, I think Brian McMahon had talked about 1.6 coming back in from the general funds in order to move along with the arts habitat building. There's so much that Central Marina needs. And I would be very concerned if you were going to money projects that were put on hold or money that was pulled back because of the COVID-19 constraints we are in right now, get put into this to take care of South Marina, but not Central Marina. I totally agree with the mayor, and I'm sure with others of you, Equestrian Center seems to me to be the place that we should focus on the history of Fort Ord, and $6.5 million to rehab some barracks. This is something that's been spoken about for a long time here in Marina, and it reminds me of Stillwell Hall and how much people wanted to preserve Stillwell Hall and how costly that was going to be. We have to be wise how the money is used. And then finally, I would just say in, excuse me, in reaching out for, to get people to hear the word about a workshop is, I would reach out to KAZU and see if we can't have one of their morning and late afternoon local blips that they do. I forget what they call it, but I think that's one place where I was hearing about the Mosaic apartment building. So that would be something I would have staff take a look at. And thank you very much, and I look forward to the workshop.
All right, thank you, Grace, for your continued involvement. And let's go next to Paula Pillow and then Doug Young.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, just a couple of quick points. One is a housekeeping. I think, and I didn't hear it, but I think the motion also should include receiving the presentation or receiving the report. And I didn't hear it. Maybe I just missed it. I agree 100% with what Ms. Silva Santella just said, all of those points. And I wanted to very quickly say something about the statement Mr. Martin made in that there's always a trade-off when you leave it to a developer. That means if you later sell that land to a developer, you're probably going to receive a reduced sales price. So there's some balancing that has to have on that. One of the factors in balancing it is how long you retain the land and how much that land value increases over the years. So it's not just a simple equation. This is going to be very complex, and I'm delighted that there's going to be hopefully at least one workshop, perhaps many. And I do hope that people realize that we have to come up with the best outcome. It's not just a favorite project that you might have that may be in your neighborhood, but overall, what will benefit the city and what will move us down the road so that we can receive the most advantage for the city in terms of what comes out of it, and also the best bang for our buck. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. And that'll end our public comment tonight. Just kidding, Doug. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. As you are aware, this is Doug Yount with the Dunes Project in Marina Community Partner Shea Home. Obviously, we are experienced in building removal, and we do appreciate staff's effort when we went through that building removal process for everything that we needed for that. So that was appreciative of all the work that was done on that. And it does look tremendously better. And I think that's very successful. Just a couple of comments. One, I think a public workshop's a great idea. Two, the future blight removal, in my opinion, should be one where it is a catalyst for development. It also recognizes the importance of existing versus future development. And as no surprise, I would encourage the council in the future to move forward with blight removal adjacent to the Dunes project within the Dunes specific plan area and in the redevelopment of Fort Ord in that area. I believe Cypress Knolls, I think, really needs to be addressed when that development comes forward, which probably is a good time to start moving that development forward. But it is, I think, best addressed in the context of that development versus utilizing precious resources for many of the needs that are there that are still outstanding, that are still significantly blighted. And to address one, I believe it was Brian, or maybe it was Les Martin's comment about what's going to happen in phase 3. It's our intention to remove the buildings in phase 3 in the next 5 years of the dunes.
All right, Doug, you have a minute left, a couple minutes left. Are you finished?
I'm finished. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any more public comment before we close the public comment session here? All right, not seeing any hands raised. Let's close public comment. So let's ask a couple questions. The first was, can the developers be basically required to tear down the blight so that we don't have to spend money doing it?
So in the Dunes development, they have a scheduled performance that they have to meet. So they have milestones that will kind of determine that. And I think the last milestone for taking down phase 3 is around the 5-year point. On Cypress Knolls, it could certainly be a requirement of the developer, but as Paula Pelot mentioned out, there's a balance with that. The land is definitely devalued with blight on it, and there certainly is an increased value to it with the blight off. And so there's always a trade-off with that.
So, Mr. Mayor, can I just address that? That's been the model at Fora for 26 years. Fort Ord Reuse Authority model was that you have a developer come in, developer takes down the blight. We have waited for 26 years for that to happen. What Les is talking about, Mr. Martin is talking about, is the results of that kind of planning. And that's why securing this funds when Fora sunset, redirecting what Fora was living on into our blight in our city, is why this is so critical, because this is a source of money that lets us get ahead of this and improve our city, which we haven't had any ability to do.
Okay. All right, so I think we might be ready for a vote on this. Go ahead, Anita.
Wait, Mr. Mayor, we did have one question from Grace. I guess it was maybe a little bit confusing when I made the presentation. I wasn't talking about putting general fund dollars towards these projects. I was referring to projects that were previously funded with general fund dollars, that the general fund dollars have been removed from these projects. So it was presented in the light that, we may want to consider refunding those projects with blight dollars, not general fund dollars.
Got it. And Brian, that brings up a question I had. I don't know why it brings it up, but I forgot to ask it earlier. I thought you mentioned about the arts village, that something that we lost the grant money that we did have for that property. Did you say something to that effect?
I don't think we had the grant. Yeah.
What he had mentioned was we had a CIP project funded in this budget for 1.35 million from the general fund. But with COVID-19, that project, the council did away with that. And we are definitely not proposing taking that from general fund. But again, that's one of those projects that council will look at is do we want to invest 1.35 million just to get that building stabilized into a point that we can move it forward? Or if you don't do that, at some point, either you stabilize or you have to look at turn it down. Now, TAMC and MST, and really more TAMC, has hired a consultant to put together a master plan for that whole area. And we haven't seen that yet, but I think it is really close to being done. And so those are the details that we can have available at our special meeting on the 27th.
Did we apply for a grant for the art? We had $50,000 to study it.
There's an ED Economic Development Agency. I think there's an EDA or EDC. There's an
EDA.
Economic Development Grant that would had people out here to look at. We could possibly qualify, but we have to have feasibility studies and other things that we got in place, but we hadn't gotten a point where those funds were available to be able to move forward yet.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that update. Okay. Anyone else before we go to a vote?
And
Okay,
one more thing, I wanted to double check. Everyone, double check your calendars on the 27th. I don't see any religious holidays, any other holidays. The only thing I see is my daughter's birthday, but that's okay.
I just wanted to say, Grace was talking about community service announcements, that the radios, different people put those, different public agencies will post those. I think that's what she was referring to. Very
PSAs,
easy
they might,
to write and send out. So I just wanted to hit that back as a way for outreach.
yeah.
There's also community calendars on Channel 5
Yes,
and
all of that
KSBW, which
community
are
service
excellent.
announcements should be included.
a lot of people see those public PSAs on TV. Okay, Anita, roll call, please.
Councilmember Berkeley,
Yes.
Councilmember O'Connell,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Morton,
Yes.
Mayor Delgado.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, particularly Brian, for that great update. It's well appreciated by everybody. And we'll move on to a couple of housekeeping items at the end of each of our agendas. The mayor's meeting, I missed it this month, so we'll catch it next month. And do we have any COVID staff or council want to ask any clarifying questions? How are we doing with Joby? Lane, can you give an update?
Matt can give us an update on that.
Sure. So there's a couple different tracks, I guess, with Joby right now. And, one is continuing to support them in the facilities that they're renting from us. And that's been kind of an ongoing effort. They're continuing, to improve those facilities and build them out. And as such, there's other things that come up that need to be replaced. So we're working with them on that. On their large facility, they have, put out a proposal, and we've discussed that before. And we've responded to that proposal. And at this point, I think we're sitting in a good position, but they haven't made any definite decisions on, their long-term manufacturing site. But it does sound like some of their production has been pushed back a little bit. So I think, some of the initial pressure has kind of been relieved. So they're just going through some construction estimates and trying to understand all the prevailing wage issues that we have at the airport, and trying to get, I think, still kind of get a fine pencil on all those numbers.
All right. And is there other interest in the airport that would either complement Joby or be concurrent with Joby or happen with or without Joby?
Well, we do hear on occasion from different people who would like to use our airport, either on a temporary basis or a long-term basis. Toyota was one recently. They wanted to do autonomous car testing on the Joby site as well. So every now and then we'll hear things like that. And you might see another one of those in the next month or so.
Okay. Lane, this money that we've been talking about for blight removal and restoration type of work, could it be used for any of the FORTAG spurs?
No, that would not qualify.
Okay. All right. So we'll move on to any COVID-19 update.
I don't think we have any COVID updates.
Do we have any more business or resident applications since we last, maybe 2 or 4 weeks, 2 weeks ago, we changed it a little bit to make it a little bit easier for businesses to qualify?
Matt, can you answer that?
To my knowledge, we have not received any new applications. However, we awarded another, actually, I'll look to Councilmember O'Connell to help me with my memory. Was it 3 additional businesses we awarded loans to based on the new criteria?
I think it was 3, and then there was a residential one that we declined.
All right.
I'm pretty sure it was 3 prior existing ones that fell into the qualification.
Excellent. Good. That was part of the point. Great, great. And then the last thing on COVID, do we have a fine if you don't wear your mask? I forget if we passed that or not.
Yes.
We did.
Yes, we did.
And is the chief of police still with us? I don't think yes, she is. Tina, Chief Nieto, do you know if we've given any fines or had to use that?
We haven't cited anybody, Mr. Mayor, since we've adopted it.
All right. And Tina, the code enforcement officer, is she still working with us?
Yeah, she's working part-time till the end of October when the care funds run out.
Okay. And do you know through her if we're still doing a lot of education, or do we not see the need to do that because people get it and we have a lot of compliance?
Well, I don't think everybody gets it. We still get complaints in daily because I get CC'd on the complaints. And so she's still going out and doing education. We haven't had to fine anybody, but we have gotten the district attorney involved in several cases.
Great. All right. Well, thank you. And to our code enforcement officer for that.
And thank you, Fred, because Fred actually supervises her.
Hello, Fred. Good to see you. Thanks for the COVID efforts that you're making as well. Great. Okay. We are ready to adjourn. Thank you, everyone. It's been a very productive, important meeting, and it's not even 10 o'clock. So this is a good model of how a meeting can run and get a lot done and not make us all go to sleep before it's over. All right. See everyone soon. See you all Thursday. Thursday's our big day.
Thursday.
Good luck, everybody, on Thursday. Go team.
Go
team. Take care. Stay safe.
Hey, good night.
Good night.
Night.